Across the United States, there are places where the water runs deep, not just with nature, but with history, tragedy, and erasure.
Over the past couple years, more Americans have become familiar with the story of the Tulsa race, where a white mob burned a vibrant black community to the ground, which is crazy. Even crazier, dozens of other black towns have been erased off the American map, not by burning them down, but by hiding them underwater.
Beneath most of America's serene lakes and man-made reservoirs lie the remains of black communities, as many as over 100 of them that once thrived, towns built by formerly enslaved people, fueled by resilience, culture, and enterprise.
They tried to erase black communities, and they came way too close.
But their success came with a price. In the guise of progress, highways were rerouted, dams were built, and entire communities were drowned, not by natural disasters, but by calculated decisions. These weren't accidents. These were acts of displacement, of punishment, of systemic silencing. In this video, we unearth the stories of black towns buried underwater, not just physically, but historically. Towns like Oscarville, Kowaliga, and Vanport, places you were never meant to remember. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we reclaim the truths that history tried to wash away. Now let us dive into this unearthly events and take you through just 10 out of these countless numbers of black towns drowned and turned into lakes. 1. Oscarville, Georgia.
This is Lake Lanier. It's a lake in Forsyth County, Georgia, where people go swimming and boating and fishing and do a bunch of other lakey things. But before it was Lake Lanier, it was a town called Oscarville, Georgia. Now, Oscarville was a thriving, predominantly black community with a church, a school, and dozens of homes, until the year 1912, when a very bad thing happened. Oh, two very bad things. In 1912, two black teenagers were accused of rape. They were tried, convicted, and sentenced to death in a single day. And after they were executed, a mob of white men terrorized, drove out, or killed all the black people in the surrounding area. And they did that until the entire black community of Oscarville disappeared. The county went from having over 1,000 black residents in 1912 to 0 in 1920.
Yes, you heard correctly. Lake Lanier, officially Lake Sidney Lanier, is a reservoir in the northern portion of the U.S. state of Georgia. Prior to construction of the lake, the area was occupied by the town of Oscarville, which was subject to a major racial expulsion in 1912.
After the black community had been run off, the white people of Forsyth County said, you know what we could use? A big old lake. So they made one, right where the town of Oscarville had just been. They flooded the area and literally covered up the entire town with water.
The lake was created by the completion of Buford Dam on the Chattahoochee River in 1956 and is also fed by the waters of the Chastity River. The lake encompasses 38,000 acres of water and 1,114 kilometers of shoreline at normal level, a full pool of 326 meters above mean sea level, and the exact shoreline varies by resolution according to the coastline paradox. Named for Confederate veteran and poet Sidney Lanier, which has caused recent renaming controversies and public debate. It was built and is operated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for flood control and water supplies. Its construction destroyed more than 50,000 acres of farmland and displaced more than 250 families, 15 businesses, and had relocated 20 cemeteries along with their remains in the process.
This is what it looks like right now. But the town is still under there. The homes and churches and schools, they're still down there, and now people go boating on top of them.
2. Kowaliga, Alabama.
Ever heard of Kowaliga, Alabama? It was once a thriving black community with a black college, the first black railroad, and literally hundreds of family homes. Today, it's Lake Martin.
Nestled along the shores of Lake Martin in Tallapoosa County, Kowaliga holds a unique place in the history of Alabama. Here's the interesting one about Kowaliga, Alabama for a minute. Kowaliga was founded by an enslaved individual named John Jackson Benson, who later became a freeman. On gaining his freedom, he went on a journey to rescue his sister in Florida, who was separated during slavery, and they made their way back to Alabama, where John worked in coal mines, and after earning $100 from his work, he used the money to purchase a portion of the land he was enslaved on. After purchasing the land, he worked the land until it yielded a profit. Then he used the profit to buy more of the land. He repeated the process until he owned about 3,000 acres of the land. Benson soon built a farmhouse, sawmill, cotton gin, grist mill, brickyard, and school, helping Kowaliga to grow into a community that housed Black and white families. The community is a home to the first Black-owned railroad started by William E. Benson and the Black school Kowaliga Academic and Industrial Institute. John Benson's son, William E. Benson was the founding president of the Dixie Industrial Company. The Dixie Industrial Company was able to succeed by exporting lumber to Europe. Unfortunately, the company lost financial control due to their exporting ports being closed because of World War II, and Benson was replaced as president by the company's largest stockholder. The case was later taken to court, but the Dixie Industrial Company was eventually lost. Kowaliga's hopes for future growth came crashing with the construction of Martin Dam on the Tallapoosa River in 1926. The Martin Dam was constructed by the Alabama Power Company to generate hydroelectric power. The dam created Lake Martin, one of the largest man-made lakes in the United States at the time of its completion. The creation of Lake Martin brought significant changes to the region. One of the biggest changes was the closing of the Kowaliga community. The residents of Kowaliga were displaced by the building of the Martin Dam and the financial troubles that were caused by the exporting ports being closed. Once the Martin Dam was completed, the flow of water from the dam flooded the community of Kowaliga, leaving another Black-owned community underwater. 3. Quindaro, Kansas City. In the early 20th century, Kansas City had experienced significant growth, driven by its strategic location at the confluence of the Kansas and Missouri rivers. The city became a major transportation hub with railroads, highways, and rivers connecting it to other parts of the country. African Americans migrated to Kansas City from the rural South, seeking better economic opportunities and fleeing racial violence. They established vibrant communities, including the Quindaro neighborhood, which became a center of African American culture, commerce, and entertainment. The community also boasted a strong sense of pride and self-sufficiency, with numerous civic organizations, fraternal groups, and cultural events. Despite this progress, African Americans in Kansas City faced significant challenges, including racial segregation and discrimination in housing, education, and employment, limited access to healthcare, social services, and government resources. These systemic issues made the community more vulnerable to the devastating impact of the 1951 flood, which ultimately destroyed the thriving Quindaro neighborhood and displaced thousands of African Americans. The flood was a devastating disaster that ravaged the city, particularly the African American community, due to the racial hatred and discriminatory practices of the white dominance. The flood was caused by a combination of heavy rainfall and the failure of the city's levee system, which was intentionally designed to protect white-owned businesses and properties while leaving the Black neighborhoods vulnerable. On July 12, 1951, the Kansas River began to swell, and by July 13, the water had overflowed the levees, inundating the African American community of Quindaro, Kansas City, Kansas. The floodwaters destroyed hundreds of homes, businesses, churches, and properties, leaving thousands of people homeless and without livelihoods. The flood was not just a natural disaster, but a man-made catastrophe fueled by racial hatred and segregation. African Americans were forced to live in the low-lying areas, devoid of proper infrastructure and flood protection, making them easy targets for the raging floodwaters. As the waters rose, panic set in, and people scrambled to escape the deadly deluge. Many were trapped in their homes, churches, and businesses, unable to flee. The screams of those seeking help were drowned out by the roar of the floodwaters. The floodwaters ravaged the community, destroying everything in their path. Homes were reduced to rubble, businesses were washed away, and churches were left in ruins. The once thriving African American community was now a scene of utter devastation. Many perished in the disaster. Over 1,000 people were injured, and thousands more were left homeless. The floodwaters receded in July 20th, 1951, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. In the aftermath, African Americans faced significant barriers in accessing aid, resources, and support. The Federal Emergency Management Agency and other government agencies provided minimal assistance, leaving the community to fend for itself. The 1951 Kansas City flood was a stark reminder of the racial hatred and discrimination that African Americans faced in the United States. It was a disaster that could have been mitigated, but racial segregation and discriminatory practices made it a catastrophe. The legacy of this event continues to impact the community today, serving as a reminder of the ongoing struggle for racial justice and equality. 4. Vanport, Oregon. From 1942 to 1948, the city of Vanport was the largest public housing project in the United States. Meant to be temporary, Vanport was shipbuilding magnate Henry Kaiser's answer to a lack of housing for the influx of shipyard workers in the early days of World War II. At its height, the population of Vanport was over 40,000 people, which declined toward the end of the war. Vanport had all the amenities of a city, 2 shopping centers, a movie theater, a hospital, community centers, schools, and nurseries. Kaiser did not limit his workforce to white men, and Vanport was open to all, creating at that time the most racially diverse city in Oregon. Discrimination, however, existed at Vanport. Housing and medical facilities were racially segregated, but the schools were integrated, as were childcare and recreational facilities. When shipyard jobs disappeared at the ending of World War II, 18,500 people stayed in Vanport. In 1948, when the Columbia River breached the railroad embankment, residents had only 35 minutes to escape as water started pouring into Vanport and destroyed the city. Today, the area where Vanport was located is occupied by a golf course, a public park, and the Portland International Raceway. 5. Seneca Village, New York City. Before Central Park was created, the landscape along what is now the park's perimeter from West 82nd to West 89th Street was the site of Seneca Village, a community of predominantly African Americans, many of whom owned properties. By 1855, the village consisted of approximately 225 residents, made up of roughly 2/3 African Americans, 1/3 Irish immigrants, and a small number of individuals of German descent. One of few African American enclaves at the time, Seneca Village allowed residents to live away from the more built-up sections of downtown Manhattan and escape the unhealthy conditions and racial discrimination they faced there. The village was founded in 1825 when landowners in the area, John and Elizabeth Whitehead, subdivided their land and sold it as 200 lots. Andrew Williams, a 25-year-old African-American shoe shiner, bought the first 3 lots for $125. Also, Epiphany Davis, a store clerk, bought 12 lots for $578, and the AME Zion Church purchased another 6 lots. From there, a community was born. From 1825 to 1832, the Whiteheads sold about half of their land parcels to other African Americans, and by the early 1830s, there were no less than 10 homes in the village. There is a couple pieces of evidence that shows that residents had gardens and raised livestock in Seneca Village, and the nearby Hudson River was a likely source of fishing for the community. A nearby spring, known as Tanner's Spring, provided a water source. By the mid-1850s, Seneca Village comprised 50 homes and 3 churches, as well as burial grounds and a school for African American students. For African Americans, Seneca Village offered the opportunity to live in an autonomous community far from the mass, densely populated downtown. Despite New York State's abolition of slavery in 1827, discrimination was still prevalent throughout New York City and severely limited the lives of African Americans. Seneca Village's remote location likely provided a refuge from this climate. It also provided an escape from the unhealthy and crowded conditions of the city and access to more space both inside and outside the home. Compared to other African Americans living in New York, residents of Seneca Village seem to have been more stable and prosperous. By 1855, approximately half of them owned their own homes. With property ownership came other rights not commonly held by African Americans in the city, namely the right to vote. The fact that many residents were property owners contradicts some common misperceptions during the mid-19th century that the people living on the land slated for the park were poor squatters living in shanties. While a few residents lived in shanties and in crowded conditions, most lived in 2-story homes. Census records show that residents were employed, with African Americans typically employed as laborers and in service jobs, the main options for them at the time. Records also show that most children who lived in Seneca Village attended school. By the early 1850s, the city began planning for a large municipal park to counter unhealthful urban conditions and provide space for recreation. In 1853, the New York State Legislature enacted a law that set aside 775 acres of land in Manhattan from the 59th to the 106th streets between 5th and 8th Avenues to create the country's first major landscaped public park. The city acquired the land through eminent domain, the law that allows the government to take private land for public use with little or no compensation paid to the landowner. This was a common practice in the 19th century and had been used to build Manhattan's grid of streets decades earlier. There were roughly 1,600 inhabitants displaced throughout the area. Although landowners were compensated, many argued that their land was undervalued. Ultimately, all residents had to leave by the end of 1857, and with that, the Seneca Village was torn down for the construction of Central Park. The only thing that remains of the community is a commemorative plaque dedicated in 2001 to the lost village. 6. Eureka, Montella, and Lackawanna. To provide water for New York City, the construction of the Rondout Reservoir displaced the 3 growing African American communities of Eureka, Montella, and Lackawanna that were in the area. All structures were removed, all fences, trees, hedges, even tall weeds and roads were dug up to maintain the purity of the future water supply. Property owners were required to put in claims for the value of their lands and were usually paid less than half of the asking price. Provision was also made to pay 6 months' lost wages for resulting loss of employment and businesses closed because of the project. An attempt by the village of Ellenville to stop the reservoir on the grounds that it would hinder the future public health, welfare, and development of the village did not succeed. To add salt to injury, residents were denied easy access to the new roadways by the placement far within the taking line, although the local towns attempted to fight this in court. In the end, the interests of New York City and its need for water trumped the concerns of the locals. 7. Willow Grove, Tennessee. It was a small town situated along the Cumberland River and was Clay County's second largest town, where approximately 74 families once lived. Like any other thriving community, it had churches, businesses, and schools. The town was established by African Americans who sought to build a safe haven and create economic opportunities for themselves, far from the harsh realities of racial segregation and discrimination that dominated much of the South. Notably, Cordell Hull, a native of the area, would later rise to become the U.S. Secretary of State under President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The town's promising future was halted in the 1940s when the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers announced it was going to build Dale Hollow Dam and flood Willow Grove. Residents were forced to relocate prior to the demolition of their homes and businesses and the flooding of the area. The townspeople even held meetings in an effort to stop it, but at the time, it was nearly impossible to challenge the government once it had decided to build a dam. Over the next 2 years, everyone in Willow Grove was forced to sell their homes and move to higher ground. They even dug up their cemeteries and moved the bodies. After the dam was built, it took about a year for the waters of Dale Hollow Lake to rise to the level that the Corps of Engineers wanted. Today, the area is still submerged, and the remnants of Willow Grove, now known as the town that drowned, are hidden beneath the reservoir's surface, making it an underwater ghost town, remembered by local history and the occasional tale from old residents. With a visit to the area, you may spot the tops of buildings and structures still intact under the surface. 8. Guild in Marion County, Tennessee. Just north of Guild, Tennessee, at the end of the long driveway running through Hales Bar, Marina, and Resort, is a long, dark building with an even longer, darker past. The Hales Bar Dam powerhouse is all that remains of the demolished Hales Bar Dam, once a pivotal structure in power production and river navigation. With a history so stained with death, it might make sense why so many people believe Hales Bar Dam to be haunted. Visitors and tour guides have reported seeing shadowy apparitions throughout the powerhouse, with one figure in particular known for pacing up and down building catwalks. A few of these apparitions have been captured on night vision and thermal camera footage from the building. According to some visitors who have seen these shadowy figures, at least one looks to be that of the Native American chief who once cursed the land. All of this began with the 1775 Treaty of Sycamore Shoals, in which the Transylvania Company acquired 20 million acres of land from Native American tribes in the region. However, a chief who opposed the treaty is said to have placed a curse on the land, declaring it would become dark and bloody if anyone attempted to settle there. And while Hales Bar Dam was under construction, the curse seemed to take effect, with reports claiming that hundreds of workers died during its building between 1905 and 1913. Even after the dam was completed, it continued to cause serious and deadly problems. It's reported that several children lost their lives due to a sudden leak while walking through a small tunnel near the dam on their way to school. In the 1,960 seconds, the situation worsened as severe leaks led to the permanent flooding of local cemeteries, leaving both the bodies and headstones submerged underwater. 9. Loyston, Tennessee. Being a rural community, the town only had about 70 residents by 1935. At that time, the community had built roads, homes, a school, churches, and several businesses. But all of that work was washed away when the Norris Dam was constructed in 1936. As part of the Tennessee Valley Authority Act signed by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the dam was constructed and all the Loyston residents were asked to leave their homes forever so the town could be flooded. Many did not want to leave, according to the State Museum, but they eventually settled in nearby Knox, Anderson, Blount, and Loudoun counties. Today, the site where Loyston once stood is known as Loyston Sea, a small inlet on Lake Norris. 10. Susanna, Alabama. Susanna, Alabama was a small but thriving town in Tallapoosa County, established in the late 1800s. It had churches, schools, stores, and a functioning post office. The community was home to both white and black families, with African Americans playing a key role in its growth. In the 1922, the Alabama Power Company began construction of Martin Dam to create Lake Martin. As a result, Susanna and several other nearby communities were flooded. Residents were forced to sell their homes and relocate. Cemeteries were moved, but some graves were reportedly left behind. By 1926, when the dam was completed, Susanna was soon submerged beneath the lake. Like other towns lost to development, its erasure reflects a broader pattern of displacement that disproportionately affected Black communities. Today, little remains to mark its existence. Susanna's story, like so many others, reminds us that progress has often come at a price, one paid by the most marginalized. These sunken towns are more than just lost places on a map. They are buried legacies, erased histories, and silenced voices. By uncovering and sharing these stories, we ensure they're not forgotten, because remembering is a form of resistance, and reclaiming the truth is the first step toward justice. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Together, we can raise awareness and help keep Black history alive.